In the shadowed corners of medieval markets, where the clink of silver pennies mixed with whispered deals, a crime was being perfected that would shake the very foundations of royal power. Picture this scene from 13th century London. A merchant reaches into his purse to pay for bread, only to discover that his precious silver penny weighs barely half what it should. The edges have been carefully shaved away, leaving behind a coin that looks almost normal but carries the silent signature of one of history's most widespread and devastating crimes. What you are about to discover in the next hour will take you deep into a world where a few careful scrapes of a knife could topple kingdoms, where coin clippers operated in the shadows like master criminals, and where the punishment for stealing mere ounces of silver could be one of the harshest medieval executions, reserved for crimes seen as treason against the crown. This is the untold story of medieval coin clipping, a crime so ingenious and so destructive that it forced kings to completely remake their currencies and led to some of the most dramatic legal crackdowns in English history. But here is what makes this tale even more intriguing. The criminals we are about to meet were not desperate thieves lurking in alleyways. They were often respected merchants, skilled craftsmen, and even religious leaders who turned the art of monetary debasement into a sophisticated science. They created networks that spanned entire kingdoms, developed techniques so subtle that clipped coins could circulate for years without detection, and accumulated wealth that would make them the equivalent of millionaires in today's currency. Tonight, we will uncover how these medieval monetary criminals nearly destroyed the English economy, how kings like Edward I and Henry VII fought back with revolutionary currency reforms, and why the lessons from these ancient crimes still echo in our modern financial world. Before we start, consider subscribing to the channel. So, settle in as we journey back to an age where silver was king, trust was fragile, and a few shavings of precious metal could change the course of history. Chapter 1: Coin Clipping Explained. In the year 1247, royal surveyors made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the English court. As they examined coins flowing through the kingdom's markets, they found something deeply troubling. The silver pennies that formed the backbone of England's economy had been systematically lightened by an average of 1/3 of their original weight. Imagine the horror of this revelation. Nearly every coin in circulation had been tampered with, creating a shadow economy built on deception and theft. To understand the magnitude of this crime, we must first step into the medieval world where money worked very differently than it does today. Unlike our modern paper currency or digital transactions, medieval coins derived their value not from government promises, but from the precious metals they contained. A silver penny was valuable precisely because it contained a specific weight of actual silver, usually around 1.4 to 1.5 grams of sterling silver at 92.5% purity. This intrinsic value system created both opportunity and temptation. Since the coin's worth came from its metal content rather than any abstract concept of face value, removing small amounts of that metal while keeping the coin in circulation was like having a license to print money. The criminals simply needed to accumulate enough shavings to melt down and sell as bullion, while the lightened coins continued to pass from hand to hand at their original value. The medieval English penny, particularly the famous short cross type that circulated from 1180 to 1247, was especially vulnerable to this kind of tampering. These hammered coins were struck by hand, creating irregular shapes and sizes that made it difficult to detect when edges had been carefully trimmed. The short cross design, with its central cross that did not extend to the coin's edge, provided no clear boundary to indicate where the coin should properly end. Picture a skilled coin clipper at work in a dimly lit chamber, perhaps a cellar or attic where the sound of scraping metal would not attract attention. The tools required were surprisingly simple. A pair of sharp shears, similar to heavy scissors, could slice thin crescents from a coin's edge. More sophisticated operators might use small files to gradually wear away metal, or even employ a technique called sweating, where coins were placed in leather bags and shaken vigorously to create metal dust that could be collected from the bag's bottom. The clipper would select coins carefully, avoiding those already obviously tampered with and targeting fresh, full-weight pieces. The art lay in removing as much metal as possible while keeping the coin passable. Too little removed meant minimal profit. Too much, and the coin would be rejected by merchants who had grown suspicious of underweight silver. After clipping, the criminal would file or scrape the cut edges to make them appear worn through natural circulation. Medieval coins naturally lost small amounts of metal through handling, so a certain amount of edge wear was expected and normal. The clipped pieces themselves were carefully collected and melted down in small crucibles, producing silver ingots that could be sold to goldsmiths, silversmiths, or other metalworkers. The economics of coin clipping were remarkably attractive to criminals. Silver prices in medieval markets meant that the metal recovered from clipping could be sold for substantial profit. A skilled clipper working systematically could accumulate significant wealth over time, especially if they processed large volumes of coins through their hands in the course of legitimate business. What made this crime particularly insidious was its compounding effect throughout the economy. Each clipped coin that remained in circulation gradually lowered the average weight of silver in the money supply. Merchants began to grow suspicious and started weighing coins more carefully, but this created friction in daily commerce and slowed economic activity. The psychological impact was equally devastating. Money functions on trust, and coin clipping systematically eroded that trust. People began hoarding full-weight coins and spending only the lighter ones, a phenomenon that would later be formalized as Gresham's Law, which states that bad money drives out good money. The best coins disappeared from circulation while the worst remained, creating a downward spiral in monetary quality. Interestingly, medieval people developed various methods to detect clipped coins. Merchants would carry small scales to weigh suspicious pieces. Some learned to judge coins by their sound when dropped on a counter, as full-weight silver produced a different ring than lightened pieces. Others would bite coins, testing not just for base metal substitution, but also to feel for the solid heft of unclipped silver. The royal government tried various solutions to combat clipping. Some medieval English coins featured designs that extended to the very edge, making tampering more obvious. The long cross pennies, introduced around 1247, had cross arms that reached to the coin's rim precisely to make clipping detectable. However, even these improved designs could not fully prevent the crime, only make it slightly more risky. Regional variations in clipping intensity created additional economic problems. Areas with particularly active clipping operations found their local money supply degraded faster than neighboring regions. This created arbitrage opportunities where merchants could profit by moving coins between regions, but it also disrupted normal trade patterns and pricing. The social dynamics of coin clipping were complex. Unlike highway robbery or burglary, clipping often took place within established commercial relationships. a money changer, merchant, or craftsman who handled many coins in the course of legitimate business, had both opportunity and cover for clipping operations. This violation of commercial trust made the crime particularly damaging to medieval society's social fabric. As word of the 1247 survey spread through England, it became clear that coin clipping had evolved from isolated criminal acts into a systematic threat to the kingdom's monetary system. The royal response would need to be equally systematic and dramatic, setting the stage for some of the most significant monetary reforms in English history. But first, we must understand the full scope of the economic damage that coin clipping had inflicted on medieval England, and how this ancient crime created problems that would challenge kings for centuries to come. Chapter 2: Economic Damage. The morning air in medieval London's Cheapside Market carried more than just the scent of fresh bread and roasted meat. By the mid-13th century, it carried the invisible burden of monetary chaos that was slowly strangling England's economy. What had begun as isolated acts of coin clipping had metastasized into an economic cancer that touched every transaction, every trade, and every attempt to conduct business across the kingdom. To understand the devastating economic impact of coin clipping, imagine trying to buy grain when no one trusts the money in your purse. Medieval chroniclers describe markets where merchants would spend more time examining and weighing coins than actually conducting trade. The simple act of buying bread had become a complex negotiation involving scales, test weights, and suspicious examination of every silver penny offered in payment. The inflation caused by coin clipping operated through a mechanism that modern economists recognize but medieval people experienced as mysterious price increases that seemed to have no clear cause. As clipped coins accumulated in circulation, the average amount of silver per coin decreased, but face values remained the same. Merchants gradually realized they were receiving less actual silver for their goods and responded by raising prices to compensate. This created a particularly cruel form of inflation because it struck hardest at those least able to detect or avoid clipped coins. Wealthy merchants could afford to weigh every coin and reject suspicious pieces, but ordinary workers and farmers had neither the tools nor the expertise to distinguish good silver from bad. They found themselves unknowingly accepting underweight coins and then discovering their money bought less than expected. The compounding effect of this monetary degradation was mathematically ruthless. If clipping reduced the average coin weight by just 10%, prices would need to rise by approximately 11% to maintain the same silver content in transactions. But the damage went beyond simple arithmetic because the existence of both clipped and unclipped coins in circulation created two separate monetary systems operating simultaneously. Medieval people quickly learned Gresham's law through bitter experience, though they would not know that name for centuries. The finest, heaviest, most perfectly minted coins disappeared from daily circulation as people hoarded them. Only the lightest, most degraded pieces remained in common use, further accelerating the economy's monetary decline. It was as if the kingdom was gradually poisoning its own financial bloodstream. The international implications were equally serious. English silver pennies had earned a reputation for quality across Europe, making them welcome in foreign markets and supporting England's growing international trade. But as word spread about the clipping problem, foreign merchants began discounting English coins or rejecting them entirely. This damaged England's balance of trade and made imports more expensive for English consumers. Regional economic disparities created by uneven clipping rates added another layer of complexity. London, with its large volume of commercial activity, might experience more intensive clipping than rural areas. This meant that coins circulating in the capital could be significantly lighter than those in countryside markets, creating arbitrage opportunities, but also disrupting normal price relationships between different parts of the kingdom. The credit and lending systems that were beginning to emerge in medieval England faced particular challenges from coin clipping. When someone borrowed 100 silver pennies, what exactly had they borrowed? The face value of 100 coins, or the silver content those coins were supposed to contain? If the coins received were clipped and the ones repaid were full weight, who bore the loss? These questions created legal disputes and made lenders more reluctant to extend credit, hampering economic development. The royal government itself faced severe fiscal consequences from coin clipping. Tax revenues were collected in silver coins, but if those coins were systematically underweight, the crown was receiving less actual wealth than the nominal amounts recorded in official accounts. This reduced the government's purchasing power precisely when it needed resources to address the monetary crisis. Even more critically, coin clipping undermined the crown's seigniorage profits. Medieval kings earned money by minting coins with face values slightly higher than their metal content. But if clippers were recovering that profit margin plus additional silver, they were effectively stealing from both the royal treasury and the general public. This created a situation where private criminals were competing directly with royal mints for the same source of revenue. The psychological and social costs of widespread coin clipping extended far beyond measurable economic losses. Trust is the invisible foundation that makes any monetary system function, and coin clipping systematically destroyed that trust. People began approaching every transaction with suspicion, examining each coin, questioning every price, and generally behaving as if they expected to be cheated. This erosion of commercial trust had particularly serious consequences in an economy that was beginning to rely more heavily on market relationships rather than traditional feudal obligations. Medieval England was experiencing a gradual transition from a largely agricultural, manorial system toward more complex commercial arrangements. Coin clipping threatened to reverse this progress by making monetary exchange unreliable and expensive. The technological limitations of medieval society made the problem especially difficult to solve. Unlike modern economies with sophisticated banking systems, electronic payments, and government currency controls, medieval England had to rely on physical inspection of individual coins. Every transaction potentially required weighing, measuring, and testing metal purity, turning simple purchases into time-consuming negotiations. Some regions attempted to develop local solutions to the clipping problem. Merchant guilds established standards for coin acceptance and punishment for those who knowingly passed clipped silver. Some markets employed official coin weighers whose judgment merchants agreed to accept. But these piecemeal solutions could not address the fundamental problem that bad money was driving good money out of circulation. The seasonal rhythms of medieval agriculture added another dimension to the economic disruption caused by coin clipping. Harvest times and market fairs concentrated large amounts of monetary exchange into specific periods and locations. These became opportunities for clippers to process large volumes of coins quickly, but they also created situations where the discovery of widespread clipping could disrupt crucial agricultural commerce. Perhaps most frustratingly for medieval authorities, coin clipping created economic problems that seemed to worsen over time rather than reaching a stable equilibrium. Unlike a natural disaster or military invasion that caused immediate damage but then allowed recovery, monetary debasement was a slow poison that accumulated in the system. Each clipped coin that remained in circulation made the problem slightly worse, and there was no natural mechanism to reverse the damage. By the 1270s, the economic disruption caused by coin clipping had reached levels that threatened the stability of the English kingdom itself. Normal commercial relationships were breaking down under the weight of monetary uncertainty. International trade was suffering as English silver lost its reputation for reliability. Royal finances were strained by reduced real value of tax collections. The stage was set for dramatic royal intervention, but first, we must examine some of the most notorious individual cases that brought the crime of coin clipping into the harsh light of medieval justice. Chapter 3: Famous Cases. The evidence gathered during the 1278 raids painted a picture of sophisticated criminal networks. Investigators found not just individual clippers working alone, but organized rings that had developed efficient systems for processing large volumes of coins. Some operations employed specialized roles, with different individuals responsible for acquiring coins, performing the actual clipping, melting down the silver, and disposing of the resulting bullion. One particularly revealing case involved Benedict of Colchester, whose criminal activities were discovered in an almost comical fashion. When he lent money to William of Kislingbury, the borrower noticed that silver filings were sticking to his fingers as he handled the coins. This physical evidence led investigators to Benedict's operation, where they found scales, files, and other tools of the clipping trade. The techniques employed by medieval coin clippers showed remarkable ingenuity and attention to detail. Simon, son of Salomon of Hereford, was arrested with not just clippings and scissors, but also an iron vessel adapted for the same, meaning specifically designed for melting down stolen silver. This suggests a level of premeditation and technical sophistication that went far beyond opportunistic crime. The legal proceedings that followed the mass arrests revealed the cruel mathematics of medieval justice. Coin clipping was classified as a form of high treason, since it directly attacked the king's currency and thus his sovereignty. The punishment for treason was hanging, drawing, and quartering, a gruesome execution method designed to serve as both retribution and deterrent. The case of Thomas Green in 1576 provides a detailed look at how individual coin clippers were prosecuted and punished. Green was a goldsmith, a profession that provided perfect cover for clipping operations, since he would naturally possess the tools and knowledge needed to work with precious metals. His execution followed the grim ritual reserved for traders in that era, carried out publicly as both punishment and warning to others. Perhaps the most famous coin clipper in English history was William Challoner, whose criminal career in the late 17th century demonstrates how the crime evolved over the centuries. Challoner was not just a clipper, but a counterfeiter who created entirely false coins using base metals. His operations were so sophisticated that he actually offered his services to the Royal Mint, claiming he could help them detect and prevent counterfeiting. What made Challoner's case particularly significant was that he became the nemesis of none other than Isaac Newton, who served as master of the Royal Mint from 1699 to 1727. Newton applied his scientific methodology to criminal investigation, carefully gathering evidence and building a case against Challoner that would stand up in court. This represented a new approach to combating monetary crime, using systematic investigation rather than mass arrests and ethnic profiling. The cat and mouse game between Newton and Challoner reveals how coin clipping had evolved by the early modern period. Challoner was not just a criminal, but something approaching a criminal entrepreneur, running operations that included counterfeiting, clipping, and even attempted bribery of mint officials. He understood that the real profits came not from individual acts of clipping, but from systematic, large-scale operations that could process hundreds or thousands of coins. Newton's investigation methods showed equal sophistication. He used informants within the criminal community, analyzed the physical properties of suspect coins to identify their origins, and even employed what we might today call forensic accounting to trace the flow of silver through London's underground economy. When Challoner was finally executed in 1699, it represented not just the punishment of an individual criminal, but the victory of scientific methodology over criminal innovation. The economic impact of individual clipping operations could be substantial. A skilled clipper processing just 50 coins per day could accumulate several ounces of silver per month, representing significant wealth in medieval terms. Multiply this by dozens or hundreds of operators, and the cumulative effect on England's money supply becomes clear. The geographic distribution of famous coin clipping cases also reveals patterns about how the crime spread throughout medieval England. Major commercial centers like London, York, Bristol, and Canterbury appear frequently in the records, suggesting that urban areas with high volumes of monetary exchange provided the best opportunities for clippers. However, cases also appear in smaller towns, indicating that the crime was not limited to major cities. The social status of convicted coin clippers ranged from wealthy merchants to humble craftsmen. This diversity suggests that the crime appealed to people across medieval England's social spectrum, united not by class or occupation, but by access to coins and willingness to engage in high-risk, high-reward criminal activity. The fact that goldsmiths, money changers, and other financial professionals appear frequently among the convicted indicates that professional knowledge of metals and coinage provided both means and motive for clipping. As we examine these individual cases, what emerges is a picture of coin clipping as both a widespread social phenomenon and a series of personal tragedies. The large-scale crackdowns of 1278 and 1279 represented one of the darkest chapters in medieval English history, with severe punishments imposed on those accused of coin clipping, combining legitimate concerns about monetary crime with ethnic persecution that destroyed entire communities. Yet they also demonstrate the seriousness with which medieval governments viewed threats to their currencies and the extreme measures they were willing to take to preserve monetary stability. The stories of these famous coin clippers set the stage for understanding the royal responses that would follow, as kings like Edward I and Henry VII concluded that half measures and isolated prosecutions could not solve the fundamental problems created by widespread monetary crime. Chapter 4: Royal Crackdowns. The Great Hall of Westminster Palace echoed with urgent whispers in the winter of 1278 as Edward I contemplated a decision that would reshape England's relationship with its currency. The king, known as Longshanks, faced a monetary crisis that threatened not just his treasury, but the very foundation of royal authority. His response would be swift, brutal, and historically unprecedented, demonstrating that medieval monarchs viewed attacks on their coinage as attacks on the crown itself. Edward's approach to the coin clipping crisis reveals the medieval understanding of money as an expression of royal sovereignty. Unlike modern democratic governments that derive their authority from popular consent, medieval kings claimed to rule by divine right. Their images on coins were not merely practical identifiers, but sacred symbols of legitimate authority. To clip a coin was therefore not just theft, but a form of treason that challenged the king's God-given right to rule. The legal framework that Edward employed in his crackdown had been developing for decades. Earlier monarchs had established that counterfeiting and coin clipping were forms of high treason, punishable by the most severe penalties available under medieval law. But Edward's innovation was to apply this framework systematically and ruthlessly, using the full power of the royal government to eliminate the threat to England's currency. The logistics of the November 17, 1278 mass arrest operation demonstrate the sophisticated administrative capabilities that medieval governments could deploy when sufficiently motivated. Coordinating simultaneous raids across dozens of towns and cities required advanced planning, secure communications, and careful timing. Royal officers had to be briefed on what evidence to seek, how to conduct searches, and how to handle the arrested suspects. The fact that this operation succeeded suggests that Edward's government possessed administrative machinery more advanced than is sometimes assumed. Edward's crackdown extended beyond ethnic persecution to encompass fundamental monetary reform. In January 1279, just 2 months after the mass arrests, the king ordered a complete recoinage of England's silver currency. This was an enormous undertaking that required calling in all existing coins, melting them down, and striking entirely new pieces with updated designs intended to make clipping more difficult to conceal. The economic costs of the recoinage were staggering. All existing coins had to be withdrawn from circulation, creating temporary monetary shortages that disrupted commerce throughout the kingdom. New silver had to be acquired to replace the metal lost to clipping, requiring either increased taxation or borrowing. The royal mint had to dramatically expand its operations to process the huge volume of metal involved. Yet Edward was willing to bear these costs because he understood that monetary stability was essential to royal power. The new coin designs introduced during Edward's recoinage incorporated anti-clipping features that showed remarkable sophistication. The long cross pennies featured cross arms that extended all the way to the coin's edge, making it immediately obvious if metal had been removed. The legends around the coin's circumferences provided another boundary that would be disrupted by clipping. These design innovations demonstrated that medieval moneyers understood the technical aspects of their anti-counterfeiting challenge quite well. However, Edward's monetary reforms went beyond simply making new coins harder to clip. He also restructured the legal penalties for monetary crimes, ensuring that future offenders would face cert and severe punishment. The mass executions of 1279 served as a deterrent example that was remembered for generations. Royal proclamations warned that anyone caught clipping coins would face the full penalty of treason, with no possibility of mercy or commutation. The international dimensions of Edward's crackdown reflected medieval England's growing integration into European commercial networks. Clipped English coins had begun appearing in foreign markets, damaging the reputation of English silver and making international trade more difficult. Edward's reforms were designed not just to solve domestic monetary problems, but to restore confidence in English currency abroad. This shows remarkable sophistication in understanding how local monetary policies could have international consequences. Henry VII's approach to monetary reform 2 centuries later demonstrated how royal thinking about currency had evolved. When Henry came to power in 1485 after winning the Battle of Bosworth Field, he inherited a kingdom where coin clipping remained a persistent problem despite Edward's earlier reforms. But Henry's solutions were more sophisticated and less brutal than his predecessor's approach. Henry understood that technological innovation could solve problems that legal severity had failed to eliminate. His introduction of milled coinage, produced using screw presses rather than hand hammering, created coins with more regular shapes and consistent weights. The milled edges that became standard on Henry's gold sovereigns made clipping immediately detectable. This technological approach proved more effective than Edward's reliance on mass executions. The economic philosophy underlying Henry's monetary reforms reflected Renaissance thinking about the relationship between currency and state power. Henry saw his coinage not just as a medium of exchange, but as a tool for projecting royal authority and promoting economic development. His gold sovereign, introduced in 1489, was deliberately designed to be the largest and most impressive coin in European circulation. The intricate artistic designs and high-quality production were intended to demonstrate both England's wealth and Henry's legitimacy as king. Henry's financial administration showed unprecedented attention to monetary accuracy and integrity. Unlike previous monarchs who had largely delegated mint operations to subordinates, Henry personally reviewed coin production records and insisted on precise adherence to weight and purity standards. This hands-on approach reflected his understanding that monetary credibility was essential to royal finances and economic development. The institutional reforms that Henry implemented created lasting improvements in England's monetary system. He established new procedures for testing coin quality, created permanent positions for officials responsible for monetary oversight, and developed record-keeping systems that allowed systematic monitoring of mint operations. These administrative innovations proved more durable than the temporary solutions that previous kings had attempted. The international success of Henry's monetary reforms demonstrated their effectiveness. English gold sovereigns became widely accepted in European markets, supporting England's growing international trade. Foreign merchants who had been suspicious of English silver began eagerly accepting Henry's gold coins, knowing they could rely on their weight and purity. This restoration of international confidence had significant economic benefits for England's merchants and royal treasury alike. The psychological impact of successful royal monetary reform extended far beyond the immediate economic benefits. Henry's demonstration that the government could effectively combat coin clipping restored public confidence in official currency. People became more willing to accept coins at face value rather than demanding to weigh each piece individually. This reduction in transaction costs made commerce more efficient and contributed to economic growth during Henry's reign. The lessons that later monarchs drew from Edward's and Henry's examples shaped English monetary policy for centuries. The understanding that currency integrity was essential to royal authority became a permanent feature of English government thinking. The technological innovations that Henry pioneered, particularly milled coinage, became standard practice that made coin clipping much more difficult. The administrative systems for monitoring mint operations that Henry developed became permanent features of English monetary management. By the time Isaac Newton became master of the Royal Mint in 1696, the royal approach to combating coin clipping had evolved into a sophisticated combination of technological innovation, administrative oversight, and scientific methodology. Newton's contributions represented the culmination of centuries of royal efforts to maintain monetary integrity, applying Enlightenment thinking to problems that had challenged medieval kings. The success of these royal crackdowns in ultimately solving the coin clipping problem demonstrates the effectiveness of systematic government action when properly applied. Unlike the piecemeal approaches that had failed for centuries, the comprehensive monetary reforms implemented by Edward, Henry, and Newton addressed both the technical vulnerabilities that made clipping possible and the economic incentives that made it profitable. Their efforts created the foundation for the modern monetary systems that we take for granted today. Chapter 5: Modern Lessons. As the last echoes of medieval hammers striking silver fade into history, the lessons of coin clipping continue to resonate through our modern financial world with surprising clarity and relevance. In our age of digital currencies, central bank policies, and global financial networks, the fundamental human behaviors that drove medieval monetary crime persist in new and sometimes startling forms. The psychological principle underlying Gresham's law, that bad money drives out good money, operates today with the same ruthless logic that medieval English merchants discovered centuries ago. In modern financial markets, we see this phenomenon playing out repeatedly as investors hoard assets they perceive as undervalued while spending or trading those they consider overpriced. Cryptocurrency enthusiasts who spend their government-issued dollars while holding onto Bitcoin are unconsciously following the same behavioral patterns that led medieval people to hoard full-weight silver coins while passing clipped ones. The technological arms race between coin clippers and royal mints prefigures our contemporary struggles with digital security. Just as medieval moneyers developed milled edges and crossed designs to make tampering detectable, modern payment systems employ encryption, blockchain verification, and biometric authentication to prevent digital theft. The same fundamental challenge persists across the centuries: how to create trust and prevent fraud in monetary systems that depend on public confidence. Isaac Newton's scientific approach to combating William Challoner's counterfeiting operation provides a remarkable historical precedent for modern forensic investigation. Newton's use of systematic evidence gathering, informants within criminal networks, and technical analysis of suspect coins resembles contemporary law enforcement techniques used against money laundering, cryptocurrency fraud, and other financial crimes. The methodological rigor that Newton brought to monetary investigation established principles that remain relevant today. The inflationary effects of medieval coin clipping offer important insights for understanding modern monetary policy. When medieval clippers reduced the silver content of circulating coins, they created inflation through a mechanism that central banks now recognize and carefully monitor. Modern quantitative easing programs, where central banks increase money supply by purchasing government bonds, operate through similar mechanisms, but with the crucial difference that they are controlled, transparent, and reversible. The social and economic disruption caused by medieval monetary crime provides warnings about the fragility of trust-based financial systems. Medieval England's experience shows how quickly monetary confidence can erode when people believe their currency is being systematically debased. Modern financial crises often follow similar patterns, with loss of confidence leading to bank runs, currency devaluation, and economic contraction. The lesson for contemporary policymakers is that maintaining monetary credibility requires constant vigilance and decisive action when threats emerge. The regulatory capture problems that medieval authorities faced with coin clipping find parallels in modern financial regulation. Medieval moneyers, goldsmiths, and money changers who were supposed to detect and prevent monetary crime sometimes participated in it instead. Similarly, modern financial regulators must guard against conflicts of interest, where those responsible for oversight develop relationships with those they are supposed to monitor. The medieval experience suggests that effective financial regulation requires independence, transparency, and robust accountability mechanisms. The international implications of medieval coin clipping offer lessons for our globalized economy. When English silver lost its reputation for quality in European markets, it damaged England's ability to conduct international trade. Today's interconnected financial system means that monetary problems in one country can quickly spread globally. The medieval example emphasizes the importance of maintaining international monetary credibility and coordinating policy responses across national boundaries. The technological solutions that eventually solved the coin clipping problem demonstrate the power of innovation in addressing persistent social challenges. Medieval hammered coins were inherently vulnerable to clipping, but milled coinage with precise edges and consistent weights made tampering immediately detectable. Modern blockchain technology offers similar promise for solving contemporary financial fraud problems by creating tamper-evident transaction records. The lesson is that technological innovation can sometimes eliminate problems that legal penalties alone cannot solve. The economic inequality dimensions of medieval coin clipping provide insights into contemporary financial crime. Medieval coin clippers often possessed specialized knowledge about metals, access to commercial networks, and tools that ordinary people lacked. This gave them systematic advantages in committing monetary crimes while avoiding detection. Similar patterns appear in modern financial fraud, where sophisticated actors exploit technical knowledge and system access to commit crimes that less knowledgeable victims cannot detect or prevent. The institutional responses that medieval monarchs developed to combat coin clipping established precedents for modern financial oversight. Edward I's systematic approach to monetary reform, involving simultaneous legal crackdowns, technological innovation, and administrative reorganization, resembles modern regulatory responses to financial crises. Henry VII's emphasis on accurate record-keeping, regular monitoring, and technological upgrading established practices that remain standard in modern financial institutions. The social trust dynamics that medieval coin clipping disrupted illuminate contemporary concerns about cryptocurrency adoption and central bank digital currencies. Medieval people had to develop new ways to verify the authenticity and value of their money when traditional methods became unreliable. Similarly, modern adoption of digital currencies requires developing new forms of trust and verification that do not depend on physical inspection. The medieval experience suggests that public acceptance of new monetary technologies depends as much on trust building as on technical functionality. The jurisdictional challenges that medieval authorities faced in combating coin clipping networks prefigure modern difficulties with internet-based financial crime. Medieval clippers often operated across regional boundaries, making investigation and prosecution difficult for local authorities. Similarly, modern digital financial crimes frequently cross national boundaries, creating challenges for law enforcement agencies that operate within specific jurisdictions. The medieval experience suggests that effective responses to cross-boundary financial crime require enhanced cooperation and coordination among different authorities. The privacy versus security trade-offs that medieval monetary reforms involved continue to shape contemporary policy debates. Edward I's mass surveillance and arrest operation in 1278 represented a significant expansion of royal power over private financial activities. Modern discussions about financial privacy, government surveillance, and the balance between security and liberty often involve similar considerations. The medieval example reminds us that monetary security measures can have significant implications for individual privacy and civil liberties. The environmental costs of medieval monetary reform, particularly the energy-intensive process of melting down and reminting entire coin supplies, offer sobering perspectives on contemporary proposals for transitioning to new monetary systems. Modern discussions about replacing existing currencies with digital alternatives often underestimate the economic and environmental costs of such transitions. The medieval experience with recoinage suggests that major monetary reforms involve substantial transitional costs that must be carefully weighed against their benefits. The educational aspects of medieval anti-clipping campaigns provide models for modern financial literacy efforts. Medieval authorities recognized that preventing monetary crime required teaching people how to detect clipped coins and understand their rights in monetary transactions. Similarly, modern efforts to combat financial fraud depend heavily on educating consumers about how to recognize and avoid scams. The medieval precedent suggests that public education is an essential component of any comprehensive approach to maintaining monetary integrity. As we consider these historical lessons in the context of our rapidly evolving financial system, the story of medieval coin clipping serves as both warning and inspiration. It warns us that monetary systems are fragile constructions that depend on public trust and can be quickly undermined by systematic fraud. It inspires us with examples of how determined government action, technological innovation, and public education can successfully address even deep-seated monetary problems. The medieval coin clippers who scraped silver in dim chambers never imagined that their crimes would illuminate principles relevant to cryptocurrency regulation, central bank policy, and digital payment security. Yet their actions and the responses they provoked established patterns of monetary crime and control that continue to shape our financial world today. Understanding these historical precedents enriches our ability to navigate contemporary monetary challenges with wisdom drawn from centuries of human experience. Perhaps most importantly, the story of medieval coin clipping reminds us that money is ultimately a social creation that depends on shared trust and mutual cooperation. The technical details of how currencies function matter less than the human relationships and institutional arrangements that sustain them. As we stand at the threshold of potentially revolutionary changes in how money works, from central bank digital currencies to decentralized cryptocurrencies, the medieval experience offers timeless insights into the enduring human elements that make any monetary system succeed or fail. The lessons of medieval coin clipping continue to whisper their warnings and wisdom across the centuries, reminding us that the fundamental challenges of creating and maintaining honest money are as relevant today as they were in the shadowed markets of medieval England. In understanding these ancient crimes, we better understand ourselves and the enduring human dramas that play out in every monetary transaction, whether it involves silver pennies or digital tokens, medieval markets, or global financial networks. As our journey through the shadowy world of medieval coin clipping draws to a close, we find ourselves enriched with insights that span centuries yet feel remarkably contemporary. The story we have explored together began with the discovery that medieval England's silver pennies had been systematically lightened by crafty criminals, and it has taken us through economic disruption, dramatic criminal cases, royal crackdowns, and timeless lessons that continue to shape our modern world. The medieval coin clippers who worked in candlelit chambers, carefully shaving silver from the edges of pennies, could never have imagined that their crimes would become a lens for understanding everything from cryptocurrency fraud to central bank policy. Yet their actions revealed fundamental truths about human nature, economic behavior, and the delicate balance of trust that makes any monetary system function. We have seen how the seemingly simple act of removing a few grains of silver from a coin's edge could cascade into economic chaos that threatened entire kingdoms. The inflation, loss of confidence, and commercial disruption caused by widespread coin clipping demonstrate how individual actions can have collective consequences far beyond their perpetrators' intentions. This lesson resonates powerfully in our interconnected modern economy, where seemingly minor fraudulent activities can trigger global financial instability. The human stories we have encountered, from the mass arrests of 1278 to the cat and mouse game between Isaac Newton and William Challoner, remind us that behind every statistical trend and policy decision are real people making choices that affect their communities and their descendants. Perhaps most significantly, we have learned that the solutions to monetary crime often require the same combination of technological innovation, institutional reform, and public education that characterizes successful policy responses in any era. Medieval monarchs who solved the clipping problem did so not through any single measure, but through comprehensive approaches that addressed both the technical vulnerabilities and the economic incentives that made the crime attractive. The technological arms race between criminals and authorities that began with medieval coin designs and minting techniques continues today in the digital realm. The same creative intelligence that medieval clippers applied to circumventing anti-tampering measures now manifests in sophisticated cybercrimes that challenge modern security systems. Understanding this historical continuity helps us appreciate that the struggle for monetary integrity is not a problem to be solved once and forgotten, but an ongoing challenge that requires constant vigilance and adaptation. The social dynamics we have explored, particularly the way that monetary crime eroded trust and complicated everyday commerce, offer sobering reminders about the fragility of the systems we often take for granted. Medieval England's experience shows how quickly a currency can lose credibility when people begin to doubt its integrity. In our contemporary world of complex financial instruments and digital transactions, maintaining public confidence requires not just technical security, but transparent institutions and effective communication about how monetary systems work. The economic principles revealed through medieval coin clipping, especially Gresham's law that bad money drives out good, continue to operate in modern markets with unchanged vigor. Whether we are discussing the relationship between cryptocurrency and traditional currency, the effects of inflation on savings behavior, or the challenges of international monetary coordination, the insights gleaned from medieval experience remain relevant and illuminating. As we reflect on these historical lessons, we might also consider what future generations will learn from studying our contemporary monetary challenges. Will scholars centuries from now examine our struggles with digital currency regulation, central bank policy, and financial inequality with the same mixture of fascination and wisdom that we bring to understanding medieval coin clipping? The continuity of human nature suggests that many of the fundamental issues we face today will seem as timeless to future observers as medieval monetary crimes appear to us. The story of medieval coin clipping ultimately reminds us that money is not just a technical tool, but a social institution that reflects our deepest values about trust, fairness, and community. The medieval criminals who shaved silver from pennies were not just stealing metal, but undermining the social bonds that made commerce possible. The royal officials who combated them were not just protecting treasury revenues, but defending the institutional foundations that supported their entire civilization. In our own time, as we navigate questions about the future of money, from the potential advantages of central bank digital currencies to the promises and perils of decentralized cryptocurrencies, the medieval experience offers both caution and hope. It cautions us that any monetary system is vulnerable to abuse, and that maintaining integrity requires constant effort from both authorities and citizens. It offers hope that human ingenuity and cooperation can solve even persistent and destructive problems when applied with sufficient understanding and determination. The flickering candles that illuminated medieval clipping operations have long since been extinguished, and the silver pennies that circulated through England's markets have mostly been consigned to museum collections. But the lessons those ancient crimes taught us about human nature, economic behavior, and social cooperation continue to burn brightly, illuminating our path toward better understanding of the monetary challenges we face today and will encounter tomorrow. As you drift toward sleep tonight, perhaps you will dream not of the shadowy figures scraping silver in medieval chambers, but of the possibility that understanding our monetary past can help us build a more stable and equitable financial future. The whispered secrets of medieval coin clippers have been revealed, but the deeper wisdom they offer about creating and maintaining honest money remains as relevant as ever. We hope you have found this exploration as enriching as we have, and we encourage you to share your own insights and reflections in the comments below. What modern parallels to medieval coin clipping do you see in today's financial world? How might the lessons we have discussed apply to contemporary challenges? Your thoughts and experiences add valuable perspectives to this ongoing conversation about the timeless human elements that shape our monetary systems across all eras and cultures. Thank you for joining us on this journey through medieval monetary history. Remember to subscribe and like this video to support our continued exploration of the fascinating connections between past and present. Until next time, may your understanding of history illuminate your path through the complexities of our modern world.